Welcome to my channel. This is an indication of some of the things that I cover on a regular basis in my videos. If you haven't already subscribed, please feel free to do so, and don't forget to click the little bell so that you'll get notified of future videos. Please feel free to share my videos on your social media, and I hope you enjoy the video which follows. Well, as the title indicates, I'm going to try making a sourdough focaccia and then a vegetarian shepherd's pie. I've never made this particular focaccia before, but I have made the vegetarian shepherd's pie many times, or many versions of it anyway. So this particular recipe for the focaccia comes from the King Arthur Flour website. I'm going to be using the metric version in grams, but there'll be a link down below, and when you go to their website you can select either pounds and ounces, grams, or volume, which would be, cups and tablespoons and all that sort of thing. I still am using a bit of tablespoons in this, but the ingredients are lined up there, and I'm making a half batch. The actual recipe says that you can split it in half easily. It would make two large I don't know, cookie tins or trays, whatever you want to call them, or one of the standard trays that they use in bakeries, and that's more than I want, so I'm just going to make half of it. And the ingredients I have lined up here: 170 grams of a ripe, recently fed sourdough starter, and this is my starter here. I haven't weighed out 170 grams yet, but I fed it last night and it's been out all night and it's very active. 170 grams of lukewarm water. It's about 3/4 of a cup, I discovered after I weighed it. And 360 grams of what they are calling a high gluten flour. King Arthur is trying to sell one of their products. They have what they call a high gluten flour that you can buy in a 3-pound bag. What I'm using is bread flour, Robin Hood Canadian white bread flour, which is a high gluten flour, maybe not as high as their, whatever they're calling their high gluten flour, but that's what I'm going to use. And 37 grams of olive oil, a half tablespoon of salt, 22 grams of honey, a half tablespoon of instant yeast. Now, this normally when I make sourdough bread, I don't add any yeast to it. I just use my starter. But this particular recipe calls for a half tablespoon of instant yeast, and that's what I'm going to add. And then to put on top of it, rosemary, either fresh or dried rosemary, and you'll also put some olive oil and sprinkle some salt on top. But I have rosemary that grows as a house plant, so I have fresh rosemary to put on mine. Well, let's get started and put this together. Well, I've weighed out the starter and it's in the mixing bowl here. And to that you add the water and get that mixing in, I guess. Sorry you can't see down in there, but that's about the consistency of milk now. The water has further dissolved the starter. And now the other ingredients get added. And before I do, I'm going to put the honey in the microwave for 10 seconds or so. Just because if it's warm, that will make it easier to pour. It's kind of cool in my kitchen. So all of the other ingredients get added at this time. Down with that, I guess. That's the flour and the salt and the instant yeast. The olive oil, just got a message on my cell phone again. And the honey. Now this gets kneaded on the lowest speed for 5 to 7 minutes, and the instructions say if you're doing it by hand kneading it, that would be 12 to 15 minutes of hand kneading. So I'll bring you back once this has finished kneading. Well, the dough has kneaded for 7 minutes, in the stand mixer anyway. It's a lovely pliable dough. Now you're just shaping it. I turned it out onto a lightly floured surface so it wouldn't stick to anything. I'm putting it in a bowl that's been lightly oiled. I used olive oil. You could use any vegetable oil would do. Allowed to rise for 1 hour. I'll bring you back in an hour's time. What I haven't said, I guess, is that this bread is a 2-day process. It'll do another rising after this, and then you put it on your sheet pan, and it gets covered and refrigerated for up to 14 hours. Mine will be longer than that. Just going to let it go overnight, and then the process continues the next day. So it's not like there's a great deal of work involved, but it is allowed to rest in the refrigerator for quite a bit of time. That's called retarding the dough. That slows down the fermentation, and the slower the fermentation, the more flavor that you get, and the better structure. So that's the reason for that. But I'll bring you back in an hour's time after this has had a chance to rise. It's had its hour, first rising or resting, whatever. It has expanded somewhat, but more than it would have if it was just the sourdough. That's the action of the instant yeast in there that you're seeing. Now it just gets folded over on itself 2 or 3 times here. That's about it. And it goes back in the bowl for a second hour. That folding over and whatever just redistributed the yeast a bit more and gives it a chance to have another go at it. So I'll bring you back in an hour's time. It's had its second hour of rising. Now I'll put about a tablespoon or so of olive oil in the middle of this baking sheet. And it rose again quite a bit. You can tell that if it bounces back like that, that it has risen somewhat. Now the object of the next part of the lesson is to get this stretched out to cover the base of the pan here, and that may take several minutes. Each time you stretch it out and let it relax for a minute or so, it will stretch better the next time, in theory. So I will bring you back when I have it practically covering the bottom of the pan here, I guess. Well, it's about 5 minutes later. I'm still playing around with it, but I'm going to say that's good enough, I guess. I got a little thicker in some places than others. You can almost see the pan through a hole stretched there, but I think after it's had its time in the refrigerator rising, it will probably be alright. Now you either cover it lightly with plastic wrap, or if you have a large plastic bag, like I think I've got here, that it will fit in. Turned around right. Yeah, that will do. I'll tuck some under it when I put it in the refrigerator, but I want to leave space there for it to rise without sticking to the plastic. As I said, mine's going to be in longer than the 14 hours or so that they recommend, but I don't think that's all that critical. After so many hours, it'll just stop developing anyway. Okay, it says cover the pan and transfer to the refrigerator and let the dough rise for 14 to 16 hours or overnight. Well, mine's going to be the or overnight, so I'll bring you back for this continuation of the focaccia tomorrow. So let's make some shepherd's pie for dinner this evening. As I've already said, I guess it's a vegetarian or meatless shepherd's pie, so the bottom layer, which is usually the ground round or whatever, doesn't have to be pre-cooked, but I like to start by sauteing most of it. You get more flavor out of the onions and other vegetables that way. This is olive oil, cast iron skillet. And I have sliced a roughly chopped a red onion, some mushrooms, and carrot. The carrots happen to be organic, which I don't often buy, but they looked so much better this time than the regular ones did that I went with the organic, and I'm glad I did. They're very sweet and tasty. I won't put the mushrooms in just yet. I want them to overcook. We'll see if we can't get the onions and the carrots softened up a bit. Or finish cooking in the oven. They don't have to be completely cooked on the stovetop here. Guess that's close enough. A good time to add the seasonings when it's a minimum of the ingredients already there. Some salt. This happens to be that Himalayan pink salt. I don't really know if I believe all of the benefits that are supposed to be in it, but I've given it a try, and to me it just tastes like salt. Black pepper. And of course, I will add a little of hot chili pepper flakes, not a lot. Just enough so that I know it's there anyway. Definitely optional for those that don't like it. And I have absolutely fallen in love with the mixed Italian seasoning that I've been using. Clubhouse is the brand name that I'm using. I know several other companies put out a mixed Italian seasoning. Clubhouse just calls theirs Italiano, and I got it at Costco, which I'm sure most large grocery chains would have it as well. So I will add some of those herbs to the base here. I'll let that go for another minute or two before I add the meat substitute. I think that's probably been going long enough. I'll put the mushrooms in and get them softened up a little bit. I didn't do any particular measure. That was one onion and it was 2 carrots, and I don't know, this is 5 or 6 good sized mushrooms, I guess, but this is all to your taste, what you want to add yourself. The great thing about shepherd's pie, everybody's is different, I think. Different vegetables go in. I like corn as the middle layer in mine. I've seen people use, I guess I've used peas, and I've used frozen mixed vegetables as well. Come back once the mushrooms have softened a bit. And now I will add the meat substitute, the protein part of this meal. But once again, this is the one that I used in the previous recipe here, made by Yves, Y-V-E-S. I buy it in Canada, but I had several Americans comment on my last video that it's also available in the US. Not a paid product placement here, but I really like their products. I've tried several of them. There's veggie hot dogs and sausages and burger patties and whatever, and I haven't found one yet that I don't like anyway. As I say, this does not have to be cooked. It's already ready to eat. It's not like putting in raw meat or whatever. So I'll only let it get heated through, and we'll put this as the bottom layer in our shepherd's pie. As I said, I like corn for the middle layer, and when I bought this package of corn, I didn't read carefully, I guess. It's one that had that, what they call a light butter sauce on it, and I didn't want that. Nothing wrong with that. At times I would use it, but I didn't want to use it, so I put it in a strainer and ran hot water over it to get rid of the light butter sauce. Perhaps a little more corn would have been a good idea too, but I only bought the one package. And the topping, of course, is mashed potatoes with lots of butter, salt, and pepper on them. So that will be our next addition here. And the final touch is the potatoes. I hope I have enough to make a layer. Too late now if I haven't. Try spreading it first with an offset spatula. Always seems to work better, I guess. Well, I guess that's a reasonably good job. I have the oven preheated to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. No specific time for baking this, just until you think it's done. I like it to form a bit of a crust on top. And one way of doing that is to drag a fork through it. Rough the surface up a little, and most of the time anyway, that will brown a bit and give you a bit of a crust on top. So I'll put it in the oven. I suspect it to be there for at least half an hour, but I'll show you the finished product when it comes out. I left it in the 350 degree oven for 45 minutes. It's starting around the edges to get a little brown, and a few of the spots are crusting on top there, but not quite as dark as I would have liked it, I guess, but I didn't want to leave it too long for overcook the vegetables down below. But let's go to the dining room and see what this tastes like. I'm just serving it with a little bit of coleslaw, a rough cut coleslaw. It smells good. I can hardly wait to taste it. If you occasionally hear a squeak in the background, it's Angel in the living room playing with one of her squeaky toys that she got for Christmas. Well, as you know I like it, because I make it all the time, I guess, or frequently anyway. I hope you'll give it a try. I don't find that little bit of hot pepper that I put in is creating all that much heat. I do get a little hint of it in the background, but as I said, you can eliminate that. And also, of course, if you're a meat eater, you can do this very similarly, only use ground round or hamburger. I think I would suggest that that was completely cooked before you put it in the casserole and in the oven, just to be safe, I guess. But with the meatless meat substitute, it's very good. Well, stay tuned. The next clip here will be tomorrow morning. I take the focaccia out of the oven and finish it. Well, good morning, everybody. It's been out of the refrigerator now for about an hour. As you can see, it's still shrunk back from the sides in several places, but an irregular shape won't change the flavor any, I don't think, anyway. The oven has been preheated to 425 degrees, and now the final preparation, you dimple it. Not so much that you would deflate the dough, but you put some dimples where possible. Where it's really thin there, it's not going to dimple very well. And you add a couple of tablespoons or a bit more of olive oil, and some of that should get down into the dimples. And the rosemary, which I have already taken off the stems. I've had that plant, I don't know, 4 years, 5 years. It stays a nice compact size because when I use it, I prune it back. But rosemary makes a nice house plant if you live in the northern hemisphere in a cold climate like I live in. It will not survive out in the garden. It won't survive even in my greenhouse, because the greenhouse isn't heated in the wintertime. Now, their suggestion is to use flake salt, sea salt. I don't have any. I have had it in the past. A small package of it was given to me as a gift. Not sure what country it was from. It was called flax salt, which I guess just translates into flake salt. This is sea salt. Not a lot, just a sprinkling of sea salt over the top. I've taken too much out of my hand here. But now it bakes in the 425 degree oven for 20 to 25 minutes. So I'll bring you back when it comes out of the oven. Well, I baked it for 20 minutes. And I think that's enough. It's a nice brown color anyway. Now to let it cool enough so that you can cut it, I'll let it cool for another 20 minutes or so that it can be cut. It's best served warm, but it will freeze nicely, and thaw it up in a few seconds in the microwave and it's warm again like it just came out of the oven. King Arthur in their recipe has a mixture made of ricotta and honey. I don't know if there's anything else in it or not, that they use as a spread on it, but that didn't appeal to me, so I'm not doing it. To me, it's a savory type thing. I wouldn't want to put something sweet on it. So, but it goes well with any meal that you might be eating, especially something Italian, pasta or whatever. And it toasts nicely and makes a nice sandwich. I'll show you once you cut a slice out of it, a section out of it, you can split it in half and it makes a lovely sandwich bread. But come back in a few minutes when it's cooled down. Well, it has cooled off quite a bit. Cut it and see what it looks like, I guess. I'm anxious to see what this large bubble area here looks like, so I'll start there. Very nice interior structure. I thought that was going to be one big air pocket, but I guess not. And a lot of this nice structure is because of the retarded fermentation in the refrigerator. The slower you ferment or allow the yeast, both the wild yeast in the sourdough and the instant yeast, the slower you allow that to grow, the more structure you get and the better flavor. So let's cut the piece off of this. And if you see what I mean, you can split that quite easily, and it makes, open it up for toasting it or to make a sandwich. I've lost all of my nice rosemary off of that piece, but that's the piece I'm going to try. So let's have a taste and see what this looks like. It's very good. The bread itself has a lovely texture and flavor. Taste the rosemary and a little bit of salt on top, that adds to it as well. But it's a very nice focaccia. Now in the past when I've made focaccia, I also like it with some olives. I also like it with some garlic on it. And I have put very thin slivers of garlic and sort of pressed those down into the dimples or whatever on top of it. And for me, that's something very nice. And if you like garlic, you might want to try that yourself. But this is an excellent recipe. I like it very much. A bit of time to make it, but it was worth all the effort, even without King Arthur's special flour, which probably would have made an excellent bread. But I suspect I would have to order that off of their website here. I don't think I'd find a store that has their 3-pound bag of high gluten flour in it. Sounds like a pretty specialized product. Well, I hope you give this a try, and thank you very much for watching.